Welcome. So, last lecture we were talking about biodiversity and discussing ways to protect species. So, usually that's what we focus on is a species, single or maybe a handful of species. Is it a flagship? Is it a one of the keystone indicator, etc. Well, this chapter, what we want to talk about is preserving landscapes, bigger pictures. And most of the time, people don't think about the landscape when they talk about conservation. But if you preserve a landscape, you're preserving the species within that landscape. So this is actually becoming a little bit more of a practical approach to conservation that, well, if I can preserve this large habitat, then I will preserve all the species within it. So you have to understand the ecology of the landscape, what species live in there, and find ways to preserve the landscape as in as large of a block as possible. And sometimes the challenge is you can't preserve it as one solid block, so then you have to get into smaller blocks, and we talked about edge effect that occurs when we're dealing with landscape preservation, things like that. So what we're going to do is look at what's going on globally, and then I want you guys to be able to apply that locally and kind of figure out, well, here's global issues, how does that impact us, but also let's drill down and think about what's happening in local landscape. What's going on in Illinois or the Midwest, or maybe we expand out to the US as a whole and try to understand the problems we're seeing in our country along with the global problems. So I would definitely encourage you. There's a case study about orangutans and palm oil in this chapter, the chapter opener. Take 5 minutes and read that. And then the challenge is go to the grocery store and see how many products contain palm oil. That's why we're losing that habitat and why the orangutans are an endangered species. So, okay, so let's take a look at the big picture, and we're going to talk primarily about forests and prairies. Two ecosystems we have in Illinois, but two ecosystems that we also want to think about on a global scale. What's going on with the forests of the world, and then the prairies or grasslands, savannas of the world. We could take the same concepts and apply them to the marine ecosystem as well. So, all right. So forests. Forests, and this is all the different types of forests. Forests make up about 29% of the Earth's surface or land cover. So pretty good percentage of the planet is covered with some type of forest. Could be a rainforest, could be a deciduous forest, it could be taiga, all those different biomes we talked about. So pretty big chunk of the Earth is covered by forests. Forests provide us with a lot of valuable products. So think about how many things we use in our daily life that are forest products. The wood to build your house. Maybe you're sitting on furniture that's made of wood. Maybe you burn wood in a fireplace for fuel. Think about paper products. I'm just going to say etc. So there's a lot of valuable products that come out of the forests of the world, of this planet. And what we have to figure out is how do we manage these forests and use them wisely in a sustainable fashion so we don't overuse these resources. So again, you look at that map there and you look at how much forest is in developing countries. Let me get my pen. So think about Central and South America. Huge amount of forest here. Most of those countries that make up South America are tropical forests. You look at Central Africa, same thing. You look at parts of Asia over here, Indo-Pacific, lots and lots of forests there. Then you go North America and Canada. You look at these regions. How much forest do we have up there? Some of Western Europe, but most of Northern Asia. tremendous tracts of different types of forests. So again, about 29% of the Earth's cover is made up of forests. Huge producers. We also want to add, so those are, when we talk about products, those are the tangible things that we can derive from a forest. You know, we can make money off of that. But what about the intangible, the indirect things from a forest? Carbon dioxide, sink, water cycle, climate regulation, etc. Let's just put the big etc. here. Lots of non-direct dollar type of services. So as we see forest cover decline, we're losing not just products, financial benefit, but we're also losing some of these major environmental things that we talked about and we'll talk more about in further chapters. All right, so the reality is we are going to use forests. How do we manage them? That's the biggest thing. So there's different ways to manage forests, different methods of harvesting forest products, pros and cons of them all. So one method here is clear cutting. So you go in, you just cut huge tracts of forest out. Cut down all those trees. Hopefully you replant. And in 15, 20, 25 years, you now have trees to harvest again. Clear cutting isn't typically the best strategy because when you open this up, it changes the entire landscape here. Your water retention abilities have decreased. You now open all that up to sunlight. You get other species that may get in there that prevent your trees from regrowing. So not always the smartest method of forest management, but it's the simplest, usually it's the fastest, the cheapest, the most cost effective. And that's often why that strategy may be used versus something like shelter wood logging. That's the next one below. So in that scenario, you remove smaller sections. So you take out this chunk here. You leave standing trees. You come to another chunk, leave standing trees. So you're taking out little pockets of trees, again, hopefully replanting, and hopefully in 15, 20 years, these trees are big enough to harvest again. And what you can do in the meantime, while these trees are growing, you could come in and take out this section, take out this section, this section. So that way you have staggered generations or staggered ages of trees in the forest that you're managing here. A little better strategy, does become a little less cost effective because you have to move your equipment, you have to relocate your sites. So there's dynamics involved in shelter wood logging that isn't as appealing to logging industries as clear cutting. But environmentally, tends to have a better outcome because you're not opening up a vast stretch of the forest and then trying to rebuild that forest. Because what science is showing, when you deforest an area, you lose moisture and that area starts to dry out. Temperatures increase. Forests have a natural cooling effect upon the environment. And you clear cut, that big open space is going to get hotter. It's going to be drier. That may actually prevent your new trees from surviving. So some definite disadvantages to that clear cutting we were talking about earlier. More advantages of shelter wood logging, but cost. Cost becomes a bigger challenge. Now with selective cutting, that's where you can go in and either clip out, this single tree here, a single one there. You're clipping out individual trees out of the forest because those trees have the right characteristics, the right species, the right size, whatever it is. And you're popping out single trees and then again, hopefully replanting or regeneration of those trees is happening as you selectively log. This tends to be a lot more labor intensive, a lot less cost effective, but ecologically, this is a whole lot better than anything else. This is, to a small extent, comparable to what happens if a tree dies because of disease or lightning strikes it and knocks one tree out. You still have the majority of your forest there. Your ecosystem is, for the most part, still viable with selective cutting. But again, labor intensive and not very cost effective. All right, so let's take a look at a huge issue that's occurring right now in 2019. And it's not new to 2019, it's just been escalated. And this is deforestation in Brazil. So the Amazon rainforest makes up the largest contiguous or continuous stretch of rainforest in the world. It is massive. The problem is it's continuously being chipped away at and deforested. Again, it's not a new thing. People have been cutting down the rainforest for thousands of years. They were doing it in small, what we call slash and burn processes that is allowing, take out 1 acre here, you use it for a year or two, you move to another spot, and when you go to that next location, that first one that you cut down is regrowing and regenerating. That's a natural cycle that humans have done for thousands of years. Well, now the amount of deforestation is increasing, and it's not giving it time to recover and regrow. The rainforest regenerates fairly quickly. It's amazing how fast that stuff can come back because of the biome that we're talking about. Constant rainfall or plenty of rainfall, plenty of sunlight, year-round growing season, easy to regenerate. But the pace of deforestation in the Amazon has accelerated massively this year in 2019. There's a hyperlink there. This is your hyperlink to a Scientific American article on Amazon deforestation and what's going on. The new president of Brazil is encouraging deforestation, and we're seeing large amounts of the rainforest being cut down. It's an accelerated rate of deforestation is the problem, and that is having a significant impact. That will have a global impact for decades and decades if it's not halted. So some big concerns about deforestation in Brazil. Not just Brazil, but unfortunately, there's plenty of places we need to be concerned about this. So what we want to do is look at what is the root cause of this deforestation? Why is so much of this happening? Why has it escalated and increased? Well, the big reason, conversion of the forest to agriculture. We need to take it out. We need to cut it down. Go back to that opening story, the case study about palm oil plantations. Why is the rainforest in Borneo and Sumatra being cut down? To convert it over to palm oil plantations. So now the problem you have here is when you've converted it to agriculture, whether it's a palm oil plantation, a farming ranch where I'm going to raise cattle, etc., you have some huge problems. You have some huge consequences that occur because of that. So some of the problems associated with deforestation, you're losing the ability to hold CO2, to retain water, produce oxygen, maintain biodiversity. You're losing stability. So all this is associated with deforestation. So as that continues, all these problems will continue to intensify. So sometimes there's large-scale commercial logging where we're pulling the wood out for wood products, but most of the loss is because people are converting it over for agriculture. So let's set up a cattle ranch so we can raise beef, sell the beef, so now we have cheap beef at McDonald's and places that we go to for those types of products. So in our next lecture, we're going to continue talking about causes for deforestation and look at the overall global picture.